This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to the Lanark Federation of Agriculture's candidates meeting. Thank you to Cogeco for providing the opportunity to present this live with the constituents of Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston. We hereby acknowledge the Lanark County is situated in the unceded traditional territory, Algonquin territory, and with this acknowledgement we come respect for the land, people, and the unique history of its territory. Thank you all for joining us. As many of you know, the LFA has been organizing in-person candidates events for quite some time now. Once again, we were able to connect with Cogeco, your TV, and they have agreed to give us the platform to run this event. So for that, we were extremely grateful and for all that they have done for us. Tonight, you will see our Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston candidates answer a mixture of general business and agriculture-specific questions that are important to the constituents in our riding. It is our hope that the successful candidate will keep some of these questions in mind when they head to Toronto. I would like to thank all of our candidates who were able to join us tonight and for taking the time out of their busy campaign schedules. Again, I want to thank Cogeco and the directors and staff at the LFA for making this event possible. I hope you all enjoy the program tonight.
Good evening. That was my colleague, Derek Oliver, who is president of the Lanark County Federation of Agriculture. I am Andrea McCoy, and I am your moderator for tonight's event. On behalf of the Lanark Federation, it is my pleasure to welcome our candidates to the candidates event this evening as Ontario prepares to vote in the 44th Provincial General Election. The Lanark Federation of Agriculture is a branch of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, a dynamic producer-led organization based in Guelph, Ontario that works to present. It is an organization that works to represent and campaign diverse interests of Ontario's agri-food sector and rural communities. Our work includes government relations, farm policy development, research, lobby efforts, community representation, media relations, and more. We have a strong voice to our members and the agri-food industry on issues, legislation, regulation governed by the municipal, provincial, and federal governments. We are the leading agricultural advocates for Ontario farmers and our members, and we hope that they do well with their farm businesses and their communities. Tonight, the candidates are vying for a seat in the provincial legislature, representing Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston. We will be giving 2 minutes for opening remarks to each of our candidates, which will be followed by a question period, and then we will come back for closing remarks of 1 minute. The order of remarks was randomly selected today, and the candidates have been seated in that order. I will now review the rules of courtesy for this evening. All participants will exercise courtesy when speaking to each other and all those present. There is a no violence policy for personal attack against an individual or the use of foul language at any time. This is an opportunity for all those present here tonight to discuss the issues that's most important with our local community. Persons who ignore these rules will be removed. Please turn off cell phones and set your pagers to vibrate. Please note the fire exits. I would like to introduce our candidates for this evening, starting with, right in front of me, John McRae, New Democratic Party, John Jordan, Progressive Conservative, and Liberal Rob Rayner. Our Green Party, Marilyn Spruitt, said her regrets. Each candidate, you will have, as I said before, you will be able to have an opening address of 2 minutes with the order that I've just spoken of. And this will be followed by a question period for all of you. You will have 2.5 minutes to answer each question. Each candidate then will be given 1 minute to present closing remarks, and the order of speakers will be reversed for opening remarks. And the way I will ask the questions, I'll start with John McCrae for number 1, and then 2 is John Jordan, and number 3, Rob. And then the next question, I will start with John Jordan, Rob, and then John, and etc. in that way. So thank you very much for being here. Appreciate the time and effort you're taking to come and for our audience to hear your points of view. So we will start with the questions, hopingly that we may have a break just before we start, or I can ask the first question and you can think about it, or we'll just get rolling now. So, question number 1. Our timekeeper tonight, I forgot to mention, is Bruce Nolan. The time for candidates will be visible in the studio, and there will be a floor manager that takes care of us. With that, I think we're ready to do our terms of engagement, and I will invite each candidate in a few minutes for their opening address. So if we'd like to start with that opening address, I will start with John McCrae. Go, John.
Thank you. My name is John McCrae, as has been said, and I'm the New Democratic Party candidate for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston. I got into politics because I felt frustrated seeing governments that were not working for working people. They were working for the people that had already made it. They were working for the people who already have vested interests in what is going on, rather than the people who are trying to actually make it. So when I decided to run, it was not because I'm doing so necessarily selfishly. It's because I'm doing so because I want to be a champion for working people like myself and like my family. I come from a family that is very working class. My sister is special needs. She has special needs, and I grew up having to help with that with my parents. My parents, in addition, my dad works in the aluminum industry, so we're already seeing the effects of that with the United States government and what they're trying to do with our economy. These are some of the things that brought me to politics. It's because I want to make life better for people, and I want to be a voice for them. So with the new Democratic government, I want people to know that it is not about people who already have their share. It's to make sure that everyone has their share. We're working for people rather than the people who already have it. And that is what we're working towards.
Thank you, John. John, would you like to address our audience, please?
Thank you very much, and I want to start by thanking Cogeco and the Lanark Federation of Agriculture for hosting tonight's event. I have been honored to be the MPP for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston since 2022, and also working as parliamentary assistant to the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, along with Minister Flack. And we've been working to strengthen the $51 billion agribusiness in Ontario and support the over 871,000 workers who work in that industry. And this is 1 in 9 jobs in Ontario are in the agri-food business. Most people don't know this, but the agri-food business in Ontario is bigger than steel. It's bigger than the auto industry, and it's bigger than the tech industry. It's very important to Ontario. This industry, along with the others, is what supports our healthcare system, our mental health system, our education system, and so much more. Provincially, trade missions to the UK Japan, Vietnam have led to stronger ties with hundreds of organizations. With the threats from the US, this work is more important than ever. We need to protect those 871,000 jobs. The Grow Ontario strategy that the PC government has in place and has been working on is targeting an increase of 30% for our agribusiness by 2032. That's production and consumption in Ontario, and this is critical at this time in our history. In addition, the Minister of Rural Affairs has adopted a strategy to support rural Ontario businesses and infrastructure and everything else that's needed to make rural Ontario have healthy communities and continue the way we want them to. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Rob?
Well, good evening, and thanks to Cogeco and the Lanark Federation of Agriculture, and thanks to the viewers, the citizens who are listening in tonight. Thanks to John, and to Marlene, who can't be here tonight, for their engagement and for participating in our democracy. Only 1 in 5 people in the world have the privilege of living in a fully open, fully free country like Canada. We have that good fortune, and to have a hope of working well, democracy demands our engagement. My name is Rob Rayner. I'm the Ontario Liberal candidate. My wife is Mary Lou Carroll, who is the music director at Zion Memorial United Church in Carleton Place. We live on 17 acres of woodland and wetland in Tay Valley Township. Between us, we have 3 daughters, one in Carleton Place, one in Ottawa, and one in Barrie. I'm also the Reeve of Tay Valley Township, and I co-represent Tay Valley Township on Lanark County Council. I've got a little over 6 years of municipal experience, which is invaluable in transitioning to serving at the provincial level. I'm a co-founder of the Lanark Basic Income Network, and I'm also on the board of the Mississippi Madawaska Land Trust. Prior to going into elected politics, I had a very diverse working life, including as the leader of not-for-profit and charitable organizations in New Brunswick and in Ottawa. I'm deeply concerned about the misplaced priorities, the wrong-headed actions, the reckless spending, and the various scandals of the Ford government. We have strains and crises in healthcare, elder care, childcare, education, post-secondary education, housing, food security, income security, agriculture, and the environment, and more. I'm a warm and approachable person. I have excellent listening skills. I have imagination and creativity, and with the people skills to bring people together to tackle the challenges we face, the immense challenges, but also the opportunities before us today. A group called Cooperate for Canada has designated me as the unity candidate who can bring people together from different sides of the political spectrum to contest this election. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. We will get to our questions in a moment. Or we're going to go ahead with the first question.
Long way from Nashville and Mama, I'll tell you that. Performed from Montreal to Boston to Los Angeles. But Toronto, that's my chosen home. Sure, when I'm walking down Yonge Street, I see some funny people who have the nerve to point the finger at me. And grin and smile and whisper. My song was #2 on local radio. Sold 10,000 in Toronto alone. Turned down Ed Sullivan because they asked me to remove my makeup. Wouldn't do American Bandstand because of their segregation policies. I was just being me, never tried to explain myself to anyone. And besides, none of that to Murray Jack, because I know I look good. Got a new way of loving, baby. Thought I want to teach it to you.
Jackie Shane was a pioneer transgender soul singer, a central figure in the Toronto R&B scene. She helped shape what we know as the Toronto sound.
On Rogers TV.
Bless you. Woohoo! Put it in your ears. The Biggs and Bar Show.
Get him. Put it in his ear. Get it in his ear.
Put it in your ears. The Biggs and Bar Show with Pasty Jamie on Shea 106.
Speed, grace, accuracy, excellence.
David cuts in, waits, tucks it home. A virtuoso.
Pure fire on ice. You know I'm here for it.
Watch Podium exclusively on Rogers TV.
And we're back with our questions for our candidates. Number 1. If every household spent $10 a week on local food, it would generate $2.4 billion annually and create 10,000 new jobs. What will you do to promote and encourage and ensure more local food is consumed in Ontario? John?
Yeah. So this question actually has some personal note to me because my family actually owned a farm for over 100 years. It's a generational farm, no longer functional, but still withstanding. It was cattle and grain. One thing that we really need to do is really initiate a plan to incentivize people to buy local. That is extremely important, especially given the current circumstances that we're facing. There are places like, they're not existing now, but there were places like Savor Ottawa and Lanark Local Favorites. They actually promoted local food, and that's what we need to be focusing on. So, one thing we need to do is also in our community, in Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, we need to increase abattoirs, so the places where they actually process meat. So currently, there really aren't many, and often they actually have to bring the animals to these abattoirs rather than have them actually go to their farms themselves. So it actually creates more burden on the people who are actually farming. So we need to increase the regulatory aspect on that and get more permits sent out, and we need to increase the amount of people who are able to actually go to these farms and actually process this meat and local produce that we all could use. We need to encourage farm co-ops as well. This is something that I think has been lacking. There's a lot of opportunity for local communities to actually feed themselves, and currently we're not really doing that. We're not focusing on that, and that's something that we need to focus on. There are many in Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston that can actually feed their communities, and we really need to actually strengthen each other rather than rely on corporate purposes.
John, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
No, that's fine.
You're good?
Yep, I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the question really reaffirms the importance of the agri-food industry. The 51 billion that I talked to previously and the 870,000 jobs. There's an increase in production already with our Grow Ontario strategy. And this is the focus of the government, not just to grow Ontario production, but also grow Ontario consumption within the province. So that's a big movement that's been going on. It's an aggressive movement. 30% is huge. Minister Flack visited Henrydale Farm recently, just outside of Elmont, and announced the 50% increase in the beef feeder program. And a huge announcement, which was made in Eden just before the election was called, was $100 million going into our risk management program. Now, programs like that give the producers, our farmers, confidence to expand their business without the risk of being alone. The government is there and has their back. So we'll continue with that. And it's one important strategy as well was the $25 million being invested in the strategic agri-food processing. And that's to bring new technologies processing within Ontario. And it's quite important that we do increase this processing in order, particularly now with the threat from the U.S., and that is the strategy that the ministry has adopted. Thank you.
Rob, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, it's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question is about local food. Local food means food that's sold in grocery stores that has been produced not far away, foods that's sold at farmers markets and at roadside stands, food where there's a strong connection between nearby farmland and marketing that strongly connects local citizens with local producers. It means the flourishing of community gardens and community-supported agriculture where acts of growing and of purchasing bring people together. Should I be the next MPP for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, I would seek to first understand what is in place now that supports local food production, distribution and consumption, and what local producers most need to see to improve their business viability. John McCrae has mentioned, for example, the need for more local and regional abattoirs. I'm a big believer that there are usually examples from anywhere in the world of doing things well that perhaps have never been tried here or have applicability here. And in that context, I would seek to explore what people in other places have done to build and support robust local food markets. For example, it would be great to have a very clear and transparent product labeling system that gives consumers confidence to know that the product they're buying is indeed locally sourced. Australia has for many years had a very successful labeling system for a wide range of goods. The famous Australian-made, Australian-grown logo is the true mark of Aussie authenticity. It's Australia's most trusted, recognized, and widely used country of origin symbol. The logo is underpinned by a third-party accreditation system which ensures that products that carry the logo are certified as genuinely Australian. And I would explore what the provincial government ought to do further to support local food markets, be it through enhanced marketing support, financial assistance to local growers and producers, and even a basic income so that people in low to middle income can better afford the food that they want to purchase, be it local food or from anywhere in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next question, number 2, I'll begin with you, John Jordan, and then we'll go to Rob and then come back to you, John. Affordable and accessible broadband internet and cellular service are critical necessities for rural communities. How will you ensure that these needs are met in rural communities?
Thank you. I think everyone that lives and works in rural Ontario knows the challenge of broadband and cellular connectivity. And this government, the PC government, has taken on that challenge and has made a $4 billion project investment to date, connecting over 510,000 homes and businesses in Ontario. You don't have to drive very far around Eastern Ontario to know that there's a lot more work to do, but there is a commitment by the Ford government to continue this work until everybody has good connectivity and broadband service. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
Well, since entering into municipal politics in November 2018, I've been exposed to updates on efforts to improve broadband internet and cell services in our region. In fact, the very first municipal business matter of significance that came before the Tay Valley Township Council at the beginning of its 2018-2022 term was a proposed new cell tower near the hamlet of Maberley, and which was eventually installed a few years later. The Eastern Ontario Regional Network, or EORN, is the group that has for some years now been championing the build-out of broadband internet and cell services in our riding and beyond in Eastern Ontario. EORN is a not-for-profit organization which, quote, helps to create innovative public-private partnerships to address the digital divide and support a stronger future for rural Eastern Ontario communities. Through its Cell Gap project, EORN is spearheading a $300 million public-private partnership to improve cell service across the region. Many new cell towers have gone up within our riding in recent years, and more are coming. In general, the intent is to install 5G technology, which is the 5th generation of wireless cell technology. Meanwhile, the federal and Ontario governments are investing in connecting all homes in Ontario with high-speed internet by the end of this year. Should I be the next MPP for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, I would, of course, strive through my office to monitor the progress on internet and cell services, improvement, and join with others as needed to advocate for continued appropriate federal and provincial investment.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, thank you. I actually remember when I was growing up in the riding, I would often have to go to school just to be able to access the internet because it wasn't reliable. And quite frankly, yes, there's been some improvements, but it's still unreliable even when I'm at home. And I think a lot of people in the riding feel that frustration. And it's not just internet or cell phone service. This is life-threatening issues. If someone needs to call 911, what are they going to do if they don't have service? And there are still many places in Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston that don't have that service. What we need to do, and the NDP is proposing, is working with municipalities and communities to actually build up this infrastructure to make sure everyone at least has access to the bare minimum that we need in the modern world. People work virtually. People need the internet to actually just do their job. And currently, that's not always the case. They don't always have that access. So what we need to do is we need to work with communities and municipalities, and we need to build up this infrastructure, and the NDP is proposing to do that and work with the communities in this province, in this riding, across Ontario, to be able to build up that infrastructure, because this isn't just I want to go on the internet. This can actually be life or death situations. And I've seen that happen, and I've heard that happen to people many times because they don't have cell phone service. And unfortunately, the government has not properly prioritized that. So we need a proper rural incentivization of getting that infrastructure built. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Going on to question number 3, and we'll start with you, Rob. How will your government develop a long-term energy framework focused on securing pathways? For example, energy from the east and west that will give us energy security within Ontario and Canada and eliminate dependence on the U.S.?
So thanks for the question. So of course there's always long-range planning underway within Ontario with regard to energy security, energy provision. And I want to make the key point, though, that energy security is extremely important, but we also are faced with the challenge of decarbonizing our energy supply and demand as much as we can. As the Los Angeles wildfires catastrophe has once again reminded, we are in a rapidly escalating global heating crisis that poses a truly existential threat to the lives of people living today and everyone to come, at least over the next few hundred years. From Fort McMurray to Jasper to Lytton to Los Angeles, Australia, Paraguay, and Greece, we have seen our world going increasingly up in smoke. We therefore have to reduce fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions as quickly as we can, while at the same time ensuring or building greater energy security. Now, Ontario is the second largest producer of electricity in Canada, after Quebec. And most of it is generated by nuclear and hydroelectric stations, and a growing share is also generated by wind and solar sources. We export a lot of this relatively clean electricity to neighboring provinces and states. We also import some as well, as the grids work together. We are more dependent on other jurisdictions in Canada and the US for oil and natural gas to help power our vehicles and heat homes and other buildings. The challenge is how to lessen this dependence by emphasizing energy sources, technologies, and end uses that help us decouple from fossil fuels. Thanks to advances in renewable energy technologies and models of more localized energy production, storage, and distribution, we have options, and there are some very smart and experienced people right here throughout our riding and around Ontario and around the world who can help us explore those. Should I be the next MPP for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, I would commit to doing everything I can to help our riding and all of Ontario be a leader in the transition to a decarbonized future while also keeping our eye on the ball on energy security. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. John?
So the cheapest and most sustainable source of energy is conservation, and we will, as the NDP, aggressively promote energy conservation in homes, farms, and industries. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture proposes some effective solutions for on-farm energy generation like biogas, wind, and rooftop solar. I would totally support pilot projects, capital investments to promote these sustainable alternatives while also advocating for changes to the grid to be more flexible to decentralize power production. This would lead to money in your pocket, by the way, if you do this. Energy storage opportunities also need to be explored because there are times during peak production where we dump electricity into the US grid rather than keep it in our own. This is energy we could use when when we need it, but instead we're selling it to the United States instead of keeping it for ourselves. This is just one form that we can keep it for ourselves and actually make use of it. We can also reduce our reliance on natural gas from the United States by shifting to these more sustainable options of heating as well. So things like solar and other biogas and things like that. So these are things that Ontario really needs to focus on, especially given the current climate. And we really need to recognize that we are an energy powerhouse and we need to utilize it for ourselves and for Canada as a whole rather than for the United States.
Thank you. John?
Thank you very much. And I agree with both candidates that clean energy is very important to Ontario and the world for that matter. And renewable energy as well has been reintroduced, and programs for renewable energy has been reintroduced by the Ford government because we now have the ability to store energy. So that's one source of energy, a small source of energy, however, and not our base source, or not capable currently of being our base source. The PC government has been focused on electrification. It's been focused on small modular reactors as a solution for our base source and a clean energy source. We're leaders in the world on small modular reactors. Preparing to build 4 new SMRs will produce enough energy to power 1.2 million homes. Approximately $1 billion to refurbish 8 hydroelectric stations in eastern Ontario. And a success story, supporting the Watay Power Project. I think there's about 1,800 kilometers of hydro lines, eliminating the need for generators in 16 remote First Nations communities. So very, very good program indeed. And clean energy, as I've said, is important to the environment and necessary to power our growing industries. In addition, regarding affordability of energy, the PC government has launched new energy efficiency programs, including the Home Renovation Savings Program, which will help families and businesses in Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston save money and reduce their energy costs. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5. There are many people in Ontario trying to find a family doctor. How will you improve this situation so that everyone will have access to a family doctor? And we start with you, John.
Yeah, so at the base, it comes down to underfunding. We need to fund more and we need to hire more doctors. We need to have that funding in place and stop funding privatization of our healthcare services. In that, we need to bring that funding back to the public service, and then we're going to be able to hire more doctors. In addition, we need to get rid of the red tape. Doctors often are doing the administrative burden that others can do, whether it be administrative staff or other healthcare workers. I think the most recent report was 19 hours a week. Our family doctors are working on administrative tasks. We can hire other people to do that through funding, proper funding. And then that frees up their time to deal with patients like us. And then that's going to open up more space, and then more people will have access to family doctors. In addition, we can fast track folks who are internationally accredited as doctors. However, under Ontario's current regulations, are not able to actually seek their certification to become board certified. What we need to do is we need to actually put a plan in place so that they can easily get access to become doctors, because they're already doctors. And there are people who are already in our communities and we already trust them. So let's let them be doctors and do their job. That will lessen the burden of the people who are already here and working as doctors and fielding all these administrative tasks. And then it will also add more to our current workforce in terms of family doctors. Thank you.
John.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I think as far as funding goes for healthcare, it's important to note that this government has made historical investments. We've gone from $60 billion to $85 billion. Funding is not the only issue regarding healthcare. And as far as the question goes, it's the wrong question. It's not that people don't have a family doctor, it's that people don't have access to primary healthcare. And primary healthcare is very complex these days, but there's new ways of providing family healthcare that are very effective, and we have to recognize and appreciate all our nurse practitioners working in primary care. So the solution is to increase the number of healthcare providers to start. The healthcare providers shortage has been, and we've been knowing it's been coming for a while. We have an aging population. We have our baby boomers retiring, and we have not invested enough in and promoted enough our healthcare providers, our young people going into healthcare. So that's critical. So we've established many programs to build our nursing capacity. We've developed many programs, including 3 new medical schools, to develop our physician capacity. We've streamlined the flow of internationally trained healthcare workers to come and work in Ontario. So these are important investments, but the cohorts, it will take time to reach those goals. So we need to change the way we do healthcare. And that's looking at family health team expansion, primary care expansion, our CHCs, our nurse practitioner-led clinics. We have people going into our emerge departments who should not be there. They do not need an emerge department, and they're overrunning our hospitals. So investments in primary care is what this government has been doing. We've seen the expansion of the Ottawa Valley Family Health Team in Carleton Place. We've seen a new Perth Family Health Team in Perth. We've developed one in Kingston as well. I have proposals that I've been working on for Charlotte Lake, Perth, Smiths Falls, and along with Steve Clark, Merrickville. So more has to be done relative to primary care, take the pressures off our hospitals, and do it in an interdisciplinary care model so that the physicians, as my colleague said, are not doing the administration piece, and the right provider at the right time.
Thank you, John. Rob?
So today, about 2.5 million people in Ontario do not have a family doctor, and this number is projected to soon rise to over 4 million. I've spoken to a number of family doctors in the last number of weeks and have learned that there are a number of reasons for this gap. They include that many family doctors are approaching retirement, will retire in the near future, and may not necessarily be easily replaced. Many medical students and younger physicians are not opting to go into family medicine, perhaps because of concerns about work-life balance or about the onerous administrative burden that family doctors and family practices are under, or even about the financial model for family medicine, which may not be attractive. Some of the physicians have told me that they didn't go into medicine to become small business owners, but that's what they've had to become. The Ontario Liberal Party has set the goal of ensuring that everyone in Ontario has access to a family doctor within 4 years. And we know that that's an aspirational goal, but that's what we're going to shoot for. We propose to do this by creating 2 new medical schools and expanding existing medical schools to double the number of medical school spots and residency positions, by adding at least 1,200 qualified and experienced internationally trained doctors over 4 years, by offering incentives to family doctors to serve in rural and northern communities, and by making it easier for doctors and other healthcare professionals to focus on patients and not paperwork. We also wish to strengthen the access to the family health team or community health team model of care, where patients have better access to not only their family doctor, but also nurse practitioners, mental health professionals, physiotherapists, and other professionals who work within the continuum of care from birth to death, and all within, preferably, a not-for-profit, publicly delivered model. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with our questions and our candidates. Please stay tuned.
Join me, holistic chef Daniela Croco, for season 4 of Simply Cooking by Chef, right here on Rogers TV.
This is a brain in urgent need of mental health care. But because 3 out of every 4 Indigenous people experience racism in healthcare, she may not get the help she needs. Become an ally. Rise above racism in healthcare.
Feeling lost? Oh my God. Discovery has what you've been searching for.
I found something.
Conquer the high seas with deadliest catch and harpoon hunters.
I'm doing this for the last 500 years.
Investigate the clues with Expedition X.
There are things out there that we don't understand.
Go off trail and off grid with Homestead Rescue. Or treasure hunt with Gold Rush.
It's not for the faint of heart.
And get back to nature with Naked and Afraid. The Discovery Channel. Get the latest on Rogers Xfinity.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to RogersTV.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at RogersTV.com.
And our questions. So this will be the next question, gentlemen, and we will be starting with you, John Jordan. The uncertainty for business owners and farmers creates tremendous stressors. How will your government support mental health programs to meet the needs of the people?
Well, it's true. Mental health in general is a huge challenge, and now that the stigma is starting to go away on mental health, people are willing to come forward, and we need to make sure the services are there to give them assistance. So farmers in particular, they work quite often in a solo situation, which, our social determinant of health is social interaction, and that quite often is lacking. And as your question stated, the stresses of financial burdens on farmers as well as businesses is another factor that affects mental health. So partnered with the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Ford government has created the Farmer Wellness Initiative, which provides free 24/7 access to counseling service. In addition to that is the Guardian Network, which is a peer support network for farmers to address the social interaction part of it and assist them in discussing and solving some of their personal issues, as well as giving them resources to address anything that they happen to be dealing with at the current time. Generally speaking on mental health, there's been investments in the mobile crisis unit here in Lanark County and Frontenac County, and that's been very successful when you talk to our police officers and you talk to our mental health nurses. And as I mentioned, Lanark County Mental Health and the Lanark, Lees and Grenville Addiction and Mental Health have partnered up to apply for and have recently got approval for a homelessness addiction recovery treatment center in both Smiths Falls and Brockville. So these are additional resources on top of those social services resources, our MSWs that are working in our community health centers and our family health teams. Very important, and these are free services that are available to the people in the community as capacity allows. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Rob.
So not long ago, I talked with 3 mental health counselors in Perth, and I asked the question as to what percentage of people in our communities would benefit from mental health support. And I was shocked when the answer was 90%. I was told that each of the people I was speaking with themselves had their own mental health therapists, and these were people who work in the field. Mental unwellness is widespread and may even be a central feature of what it means to be human. We all have our stresses, we all have our doubts, we all have our fears, we all have our anxieties, we even have our unhealthy beliefs about ourselves and about other people. It's just a question of degree between one person and the next. People can be mentally ill for a short period of time, or it can be a lifelong affliction. This is why one of my favorite quotations is from an ancient Greek philosopher who urged that we, quote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle." And everyone should know, as John Jordan has rightly said, that there's no shame in experiencing or suffering mental unwellness, and there's no shame in asking for and securing help. And for any young people who are listening tonight, special message to you, because I think you're facing a world in which the pressures on mental health are far more extreme than I think they were when I was growing up, and the influences of social media on our young people is of great concern. Should I be the next MPP for Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, I would push for stepped up provincial support for mental health services, including services delivered by organizations like the nonprofit Pivotal Help in Perth. They offer no-cost mental health support to people in the Perth, Smiths Falls, and Carleton Place region. These supports must also include for people struggling with addiction, and for many of whom the supports must include access to more emergency and transitional housing so that they have safe and stable accommodation while being offered help to overcome their addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. John?
I guess I want to cut right to the chase here. Mental health care is health care. It should be covered under our universal health care plan. I've seen far too many people not be able to access the health care that they need because it is mental health care. They're put on a wait list for months when others with private insurance are able to access it within weeks. That is not okay, because mental health care is health care. And that is a disparity that we've seen under this Ford government and previous Liberal governments as well. That is something that needs to change. That is something, mental health care is something that needs to be included as a right. Healthcare is a right, mental health care is a right, because it is part of making us healthy. I say this as someone who has gone to therapy and someone who has accessed mental health resources. And far too many people aren't receiving the care that they need because it's being, the can is kicked down the street. It'll be dealt with at some point. But no, people need it now. Mental health care is not something that can wait months. It's something that needs to be dealt with now. So we need to include this in our universal health care plan, which is what the NDP wants to do. We want to include it in our, just like if you broke a leg, if you're feeling anxiety, it's going to be dealt with the same. You can deal with it on the same day, and that's okay. So everyone needs to be able to see that in a timely manner, and unfortunately, with the way the system is now, we're not seeing that. So that's what the NDP wants to do. We want to build it into our existing healthcare plan, and everyone will be able to see the benefits of that, especially in current circumstances where we've seen mental health kind of take the platform in terms of people are seeing it as it is now, where they might not have seen that before. And I think that's a really good thing, but if we want to see it as it is, we also, as a government, have to back it up and say, okay, you're seeing it as it is, we're going to help you deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. The next question, number 6. The threat of tariffs from the U.S. has brought to the forefront the erosion of industrial and advancing manufacturing in Ontario. What steps will your party take to develop and implement a long-term modern, industrial, and advanced manufacturing strategy to drive investment and competitiveness? Rob, this is your first with the question?
Yep, thanks, Andrea. So the first thing to be said about the tariffs issue is that it was the pretext, but a false pretext, for Premier Ford to call a snap election in the middle of winter when the possibility of wicked weather, such as we will be getting tonight and into tomorrow, seriously threatens the execution of an election. The tariffs crisis is huge, but it is not the only crisis we face in Ontario. We cannot forget about the crises in healthcare, education, childcare, elder care, affordability, housing, the environment, and much more, and all made worse by the nearly 7 years of the Ford government. Our focus must be on sound public policy which will build resilience within individual people, within families, within businesses, and within whole communities. Ecology teaches us that diversification is good for ecosystems to thrive. And so if we want a thriving business ecosystem, we need to invest in diversification of products, services, and markets, and diversification in the number of players participating in various business sectors. We must also guard against undue corporate concentration, no matter the sector. This means strong emphasis on support for small businesses, rightly called the backbone of economies. The Ontario Liberal Party proposes to reduce the small business deduction tax rate by half, from the current 3.2% to 1.6%, and to increase the income threshold that is eligible for this deduction from $500,000 to $600,000. This will allow more businesses to qualify. Nearly 275,000 out of Ontario's 450,000 small businesses will benefit from this tax cut, allowing for increased investments in advanced machinery, new hires, and business expansion. And if I'm to be the new MPP, an early move would be to task my staff to survey small and medium-sized businesses in the riding as to the pressures they're facing, the risks they are taking, and the ideas they have for solving this challenge.
Thank you. John?
Thanks. So what's really important when we're talking about these tariffs is that on Canada as a whole, we have interprovincial trade barriers, which is kind of unfathomable when you really think about it. Within our own country, we have barriers between us actually exporting to other provinces. So that is something that the NDP really wants to work on, is removing those. That in itself will diversify Ontario's economy to be more internal and focus on Canada as a whole. In addition, what the NDP wants to do is expand our supply chains. So that means also international partners. So right now, a lot of our trade is done with the United States, of course, by geography. It makes sense, but we need to diversify that. And there are many places in the world that would want the things that Ontario makes, including our agricultural sector, our manufacturing sector. All of these things are things that are valuable in other parts of the world, and we really need to focus on that and diversify our supply chain and our export markets in that way. In addition, we need to also value Ontario in and of itself. We can buy internally as well, buy Ontario. Our agricultural foods, Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston is an agricultural hub, and amongst many places in Ontario, but we can buy locally as well. And those are things that really need to be honed in on. We also need to promote apprenticeships and training for workers when we do these things, because we've seen these, the industrial sector needs these people to do this work.
Thank you, John. John.
Thank you very much. And yes, you're quite right. There was an erosion of industries and manufacturing, but prior to 2018, where 300,000 jobs left this province from the manufacturing sector. And actually under the Ford government, there has been incredible investments in Ontario on the manufacturing side, our open for business strategy, creating an environment that is fertile for businesses to invest in Ontario, has created over 800,000 new jobs and secured $45 billion in new investments in electric vehicle and battery plants alone. Volkswagen, Honda, Stellantis, to name a few. Manufacturing employment is at one of its highest levels since 2008. Global biomanufacturers and life sciences as well have invested over $5 billion in Ontario. In 2023, global companies invested over $11 billion in Ontario. By reducing red tape and having the needed energy available, we are producing a fertile environment for new business to invest in Ontario, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Next question. In your opinion, how could the removal of interpersonal trade barriers strengthen the economic climate in Ontario and assist local businesses and farmers? John.
This John.
This John?
So I think the biggest thing is less reliance on the United States. We're seeing how unreliable that they have become as a economic partner and ally and neighbor. We need to be able to support ourselves. So when we're working within Canada, we're able to really strengthen these bonds and know that we have a stable economy in doing so. In addition, jumping off of that, we are strengthening ties with our provincial neighbors, let's say Quebec, Manitoba, even those in the Atlantic provinces. What we're doing when we're removing these trade barriers, interprovincial trade barriers, is that we're actually strengthening Canada as a whole, and we're strengthening our national identity as well. So in terms of farmers, it actually opens up the supply chain for them. I read a thing recently where there was a pig farmer in Eastern Ontario, and he wasn't able to sell his products in Quebec because there were different regulations for the pig there. When we're actually communicating on these things and working together on these things, it removes those barriers. So this farmer in Eastern Ontario is going to be able to sell his pig product in Quebec as well. So that's just an example, and those are the kind of things that our agriculturalists are facing when they're trying to sell their products in Canada, and removing those barriers is going to help that.
Thank you. Thank you, John. John?
Thank you. And absolutely, these barriers, interprovincial barriers, need to be addressed. Ontario is Canada's largest player in interprovincial trade, with over $300 billion in 2022. It's never been more important. We need to continue to work with provinces, territories, and the federal government to ensure open markets. The Ontario government views the Canadian Free Trade Agreement as a key tool to enhancing growth opportunities. And this includes the recently approved action plan, which outlines a series of key priorities through to 2027, and a pilot project to look at the scope of mutual recognition and standardization in the trucking sector, going from province to province. Again, with our tariff threats, the work needs to continue and is more important than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Rod?
So just by way of introduction on this one, viewers should understand that most politicians don't have specialized knowledge in every single subject that they're faced with. And that's certainly the case for me. I'm a generalist who is learning about interprovincial trade barriers, because this question was on the agenda tonight. So I looked up what the Canadian Chamber of Commerce had to say, and they reported that labor-related, regulatory, and other barriers constitute about a 7% tariff between provinces and territories, and that liberalization of internal trade could add $50 billion to $130 billion to Canada's gross domestic product. Using an estimate of $100 billion, these economic gains represent more than $7,500 per household per year. The Chamber recommends that the federal government work with the provincial and territorial governments on the mutual recognition of regulations, rules, and policies to allow for the free movement of labor, goods, and services in Canada, and the reduction of exceptions as currently established within the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, and conduct a full review with a view to further eliminating barriers to trade, investment, and labor mobility. Now, specific to agriculture and agri-foods, it's been recommended that there be a streamlined, transparent regulatory environment to enable agri-food startups and small businesses to scale up and compete internationally, to expand trade agreements beyond North America to markets like the European Union, Japan, and Southeast Asia, to mitigate the risks of U.S. protectionist policies, greater investment in food processing facilities to help retain economic value within Canada, reducing reliance on raw commodity exports, and interprovincial trade reform, removing barriers that limit the free movement of food products between provinces. This would improve domestic market efficiency and competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Next question, we'll start with John Jordan. It is estimated that Ontario loses 319 acres of farmland every day to urban sprawl and development. How do you plan on balancing the needs for affordable housing, protect land, and the need for food production?
I think certainly balance is the important word here. There are competing demands for land. But first, I'd like to that's a scary number, 319 acres. And the Census of Agriculture from 1921 to date looks at farm area, land and crops, summer fallow land, tame and seeded pasture, and a catch-all, all other land. In actual fact, acres and crop went up, and most of the reduction came from the all other land category. So it's important to understand that. Stats Canada itself issued a caution in interpreting this data due to the change in agricultural definition. So I think we should heed to that caution when we're looking at 319 acres. But notwithstanding that, it's vitally important that we protect our farmland. And there has been and needs to be a continued balanced approach. We do need to build homes. We do need to increase our economy, and all of those need, need land. So the provincial planning statement requires the agricultural system approach be used to identify prime agricultural lands and provides direction on when agricultural impact assessments are used. So the agricultural impact assessments need to be done in areas that of importance where agricultural land is required, and these assessments will determine and protect our agricultural land. A good example of using that is when the Minister of Energy increased the availability of renewable energies and limited that solar farms are banned on specialty croplands and Class 1 farmland. They cannot be placed on these lands. Thank you.
Thank you. Where am I at here? John.
Oh, that's me.
Yes.
Thanks, Andrea. So I'm going to quote from the Ontario Farmland Trust. They say that in the past 35 years, Ontario has lost 2.8 million acres, 18% of its farmland, to non-agricultural land uses like urbanization and aggregate mining. I'm also going to quote from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. This is from early February. They say that farmland is the cornerstone that supports every major aspect of life in Ontario. For Ontario farmers to maintain supply and meet demand for local products, farmland needs to be protected and urban sprawl contained. Agricultural land is a finite resource, making up less than 5% of Ontario's land, and when it is lost forever. Long-term land use planning must balance encouraging urban and industrial growth with protecting agricultural land to ensure we have the resources available to continue producing food for the future. The Ontario Federation of Agriculture is asking candidates to support, and I do support, protecting domestic food and farm production by preserving farmland through smart land use planning policy and intensifying development in the existing urban footprint and distributing economic development province-wide. Also, the Ontario Farmland Trust says Ontario's farmland has been sorted into classes that shows how capable it is of supporting agriculture. The surveys that created this classification system provide valuable data about the land. However, they don't tell the whole story. While soils that fall into higher ranked classes are typically better at producing traditional row crops and horticulture, the soils that fall into lower ranked classes are still a highly valuable agricultural resource capable of supporting a large variety of agricultural activities, such as tender fruit and livestock production. And underscoring all of our agricultural land is worthy of protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. John.
Thank you. So all of this, Marit Stiles, the leader of the NDP, actually started her campaign on Stuart Schneider's farm in Wilmot Township. It was about 770 acres of farmland, fruitful farmland that is still productive. When asked, and it was going to be developed. When asked about it, Doug Ford said, "I'm all for it." So that is the current government that we're in. They don't care about keeping our farmland fruitful. They want to pave it over for their developer friends. They want to line pockets. That's all it is. The NDP, what we want to do is we want to support our farms and communities so that we can, as best as we can, feed ourselves. We can support our local communities. For example, one of our platform issues is school lunch program, and it's going to be fed by Ontario-grown food as best as we can. So that is something we're actually investing in our farmers and our farmland. In addition to this, what we need to consider is, yes, we have a housing affordability crisis. We have a housing crisis. We don't have enough. What we need to do is urban infill. We can't keep spreading as much as we can. We need to keep our urban boundaries, and we need to densify as best as we can. That is something that the NDP is very adamant about. We need to make sure that people can actually buy a house, rent where they live, and that we're actually protecting our farmland around it. say, the Greenbelt in Toronto, or Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, which is a largely rural area. We need to make sure that when these properties are going for sale, if it's a fruitful agricultural property, that needs to be the highlight, and we need to, as best as we can, make sure that someone is going to fulfill that.
Thank you. Next question, and John, you're up again. Energy prices across the province contribute to increased production cost. The taxes on energy, including the carbon tax, become a burden for businesses to remain competitive. Do you have a plan to reduce these costs for business?
Yes. So we need to pursue an equitable approach to addressing the climate crisis. So we do need to do our part to address greenhouse gases. You can't. You have to walk the walk. You can't just say what you want. So we need to put that into consideration. But we also need to invest in energy conservation. So especially in Lanark-Frontenac-Kingston, where there are a lot of older homes, we need to invest in refurbishing these homes to make sure that they're actually able to hold in heat, so that they're not energy wasteful. We need to make sure that they're performing the way that they should. In addition, one thing the Ford government did, as pretty much as soon as they got in power, was remove us from the cap and trade system, the cap and trade agreement that we had with Quebec and California. We wouldn't have the carbon tax if we stayed in the cap and trade system. But because of them, the Ford government removing themselves from that agreement, we now have the carbon tax. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it. So the cap and trade system actually goes against, or goes towards corporations rather than working people. Whereas the carbon tax, obviously, we get the rebates at the end of the year, but it doesn't really matter when you're trying to put food on your table on that week. It doesn't matter if you're getting it a year from then. You need it now. But if we, what the NDP wants to do is go back into that cap and trade system so that it's actually the corporations who are paying for these greenhouse gases, not working people. Yeah, so I think that's where we've kind of lost the plot, is that we've focused on regular people rather than the people who, the corporations who are actually polluting.
Our time on questions, we've got so many great questions to ask. The next question, we're going to give you a minute to answer, and then the audience will be taking a break. Okay, yes, I know. I just wanted to give you all the update. I realize I haven't finished asked the last question, but I just wanted to give you good time in the next question. So here we go with the question that is the right time. Ontario must address the labor shortages to protect its food supply chain. Unfilled jobs cost the agricultural sector $591 million annually. What do you think needs to be done to fill this labor gap and attract more skilled young people? Oh, I'm really getting a little off on topic here, gentlemen. I'm so glad this debate is live. It shows our vulnerability right across the door. So I believe, John, you need to answer the question that I read prior to what I started. So do you need me to write it again, or are you okay?
I'm good.
All right, we'll continue.
Yeah,
We're on track again.
Yeah, and carbon tax it's nothing but a tax on people. Let's just get that out straight. It does not do anything for the environment. It's a tax. In November of 23, I presented a motion at Queen's Park that in the opinion of this House, the Government of Canada should take immediate steps to eliminate the carbon tax on fuels and inputs for home heating. Both of my colleagues' parties voted against this. However, it did pass, along with MPP Jones's motion to eliminate carbon tax on agricultural production. And when you look at our greenhouses, when you look at our corn drying, this is a huge cost that's being borne by, on the food table. Eventually, that's where it ends up. And when you look at the trucks that get that food to the grocery store, same deal. So carbon tax is a bad thing. The Ford government has been railing against it for years now and has had no support from either the NDP or the Liberals, and it's hurting people. When we talk about affordability, we talk about food security. This is a bad, bad tax.
Thank you. Rob.
The problem with the carbon tax, well, to correct John, the carbon tax was actually a carbon tax and rebate, and most people actually benefited financially through the rebate. However, it's difficult to explain that, difficult to market it, and the reality is globally, unless everyone kind of buys into a carbon pricing scheme, and only a minority of people do, greenhouse gas emissions are going to continue to go up. The federal carbon tax will be terminated soon, and the Ontario Liberal Party, should we form the next government, would not introduce a new Ontario carbon tax. We are currently meeting with stakeholders and subject matter experts to receive their ideas and formulate a Made in Ontario climate action plan. In my view, this should include incentives or carrots for businesses and individuals and households to choose zero carbon or low carbon energy alternatives. And a great option for Ontario would be to establish an energy efficiency utility, like the state of Vermont has had in place for over 20 years. And I had an opportunity to visit that many years ago, early in its formation. That utility is called Efficiency Vermont, and it helps Vermonters live better while spending less on energy. They work with partners throughout Vermont to save customers money, strengthen the state's economy, and lower carbon emissions. Over 2000 to 2021, Efficiency Vermont eliminated over 13 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions and saved Vermonters over $3 billion US in energy and water costs over the lifetime of their investments in energy efficiency, equipment, and building improvements. So there's definitely things we can do to reduce our energy demand, and that will save businesses and homeowners plenty of money. We are actually a little bit energy profligate in Canada. We have one of the highest per capita uses of demands on energy and also the highest per capita emissions. We have to take more responsibility if we are looking ahead to the future of our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Now, next question. 1 minute. I'm reading it now, and our order will be Rob, then John, then John. I think I've got it back on track now. So here we go. Ontario must address the labor shortages to protect its food supply chain. Unfilled jobs cost the agricultural sector $591 million annually. What do you think needs to be done to fill this labor gap and attract more skilled young people to the agricultural industry?
So to recruit and maintain and reward agricultural workers, we need to ensure that the jobs of agricultural workers, whether in fields or greenhouses or processing plants, are all good jobs with fair wages and safe working conditions. To the extent we rely upon migrant workers for this labor, we need to ensure that they have full and proper labor rights, open work permits, and a pathway to citizenship should a given migrant worker wish to remain in Canada. Also, an agricultural labor strategy that recognizes the seasonality of Canadian farming and which provides livable incomes for farm workers year-round will be necessary to build a long-term resident labor force. In this sense, I believe that, once again, a basic income guarantee could go a long way in stabilizing the incomes of agricultural workers and giving them the security and confidence to know that there is a future in farming.
Thank you, Rob. John.
Thank you. What we need is more funding in our secondary and post-secondary schools. When our kids are going to high school, they need to know that this is a fruitful, sorry, the pun, for a fruitful form of work. So we need to really invest ourselves in that. We need to promote internships in high school. We already have internships elsewhere as well. Agriculture is something that we really need to focus on as well. We can focus on cooperatives as well as a partial solution, which can provide some flexibility to work-life balance. And just in general, we need to celebrate farming and farmers. As someone who has a family that was in the farming community for a long time, it's something that means a lot to me, and I think if we paid more attention to it, more people would be drawn to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And John.
Thanks, Andrea. Farming's become a really complex business. There's a lot of great jobs in the tech portion of it, biosecurity, in the sciences. So we need to, when I think back, and it's a long time ago, in high school, we need to make sure that our secondary schools are really promoting and informing students of the vast, great careers they could have in the ag sector. So that's one on internal. And then our international agricultural workers that come in, we're taking really good care of them now. They have health benefits. They have great places to live. And our agricultural community, in many cases, these are generational families. We need to continue that and protect and that source of workers. They're great workers. They love coming here. They love going home, warmer weather. And we need to continue to encourage that and take care of them, and that's exactly what we've been doing.
Thank you, John. We are going to take another quick break. Please stay tuned. Join us after the break.
Welcome to Community News and Events on Rogers TV, Channel 22. I'm Ramon DeFranco. Ontario voters were scheduled to go to the polls in June of next year, but Doug Ford called an early election set for February 27th. The province has a great website where you can look up information about your riding, find your polling location, who the candidates are, and the different voting options available, such as early voting, voting by mail, or on election day. Early voting is available from now until February 26th, and the deadline to apply to vote by mail is February 21st. To register to vote, update your information, or to apply to work as an election official yourself, visit elections.on.ca. Remember, every vote matters. To have your community news or event listed on our website, please go to rogerstv.com and click on events and post your event. That's it.
Learn all about the creation of the National Capital Region on The History of Ottawa according to Phil Jenkins on Rogers TV.
When I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, I was deteriorating in front of everybody.
All my life I lived with sickle cell. I went through a tragic crisis that put me in a coma for 3 weeks. While I was in there, I received a lot of blood to put me in a healthier state.
I was given the plasma then through IVIG. Even though that happened so long ago, it still has a massive impact on me today.
Thanks to donors, I can live another life.
Because of you, I will be seeing my grandchild.
You're invited to join us for an hour to give. Each week we talk about philanthropy, time, talent, and treasure. You'll learn about what's happening in your community. Join us then.
Well, that brings us to the end of our questions parts. I now invite, starting in reverse order, that you have the opportunity to have closing remarks. So we will start with you, Rob, then John Jordan, and then John Macrae.
Thanks, Andrea. So in the current school year, the Ford government has cut more than $21 million from the 49 elementary and high schools in our riding, a cut amounting to nearly $1,600 per student. Why and at what cost? To our children, to our communities, to our future. In this election, in this riding, I believe there are two candidates who can win: John Jordan, the incumbent, or myself. I've been selected as the unity candidate by a group called Cooperation for Canada, who believe that I'm in best position to draw support across the political spectrum to win this riding. If you do not like what the Ford government has done, if you fear what it could do if given another 4 years in power, and if you like what you see in my candidacy, then I ask you to vote for me either on one of the early voting days of February 20th, 21st, or 22nd, or on Election Day, February 27th. However, given our winter weather, I don't advise that you wait until February 27th. I want to once again thank Cogeco, viewers online, the Lanark Federation of Agriculture for hosting this forum, and my fellow candidates. Tip their hat to them for putting their names in the ring. Of course, John is the incumbent. So thank you very much. And for more information on me and my candidacy, please visit my website, robrainer.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. John?
Again, thank you very much, Andrea, for hosting this today. You know, personally, I entered into politics in 2022 because of my experience, 21 experience in healthcare, and I had a passion. I thought I could contribute to healthcare, and I believe I have. My time in long-term care as PA to long-term care was very productive, with huge investments going into our long-term care homes, and we see new homes in Carlton Place, in Elmont, a new home going to open here in Smiths Falls, and a new, we're about to put shovels in the ground in Perth. So very important to taking the pressures off our hospitals and ALC. I also have a small beef farm, and I'm passionate about agriculture, so working as PA to the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness has been very informative, very exciting, and we're also making great progress. Growing the agribusiness, as I said earlier, is key, and we're continuing to do that. And with new challenges from the south, we need to continue to work at breaking down our interprovincial borders and building our industry and building our consumption within Ontario as well. So we're going to continue on that track. I'm pleased with the direction that the Ford government has taken, and I'm also in total belief that calling an early election was important to match Ford's mandate up with Trump's mandate and get that out of the way so he can continue to fight, as we've seen him do every day on the media, fighting for Canada, fighting for Ontario against the U.S. tariffs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Saving not the last for last, but John McRae, it's all yours.
Thank you. So I guess I want to finish this saying the NDP is the other choice. We've seen Conservative after Liberal governments do the exact same thing. Under the Ford government, we've seen ERs close. Look at Carlton Place. They had to close their ER countless times because they didn't have enough staff. Under the Liberal government, they basically invented hallway medicine in this province. We deserve better. Everyone deserves better here. I will also say that Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals said they spent too much on healthcare. That is not the case. If anything, we spent not enough. Healthcare is a #1 priority. When we look at agriculture, we need to be able to support our farmers. We need to support our workers. This goes across the board, across the province. I want to thank the Lanark Federation of Agriculture for having us here, but I just want voters to know that another option is available, and that is the NDP, and I hope I can be that person for you, because we have seen far too often that we get left behind rather than put forward. Workers get left behind, the already rich get put forward. So we need to make a change on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Well, I want to thank you very much, all of you. John McRae, John Jordan, Rob Rayner, for coming and joining us. It has been a pleasure to moderate a very civil, you've just done very well. So I thank you very much again. So on behalf of the Lanark Federation, I wish you well, and I wish you well at your other candidate meetings. And good luck to all of you.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Four nations facing off.
For what?
For friend.
And foe.
For teammates.
Turned rivals.
For the frozen ponds of Sweden.
And Scottsdale.
For still believing in miracles.
Lejonhall. 40 kronor.
For the Maple Leafs.
For the entire world to see.
Four nations facing off.